Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch Live, and I'm Bill Stone. And tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have, of course, the weekly current Lancaster County virus statistics for Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live. We will talk about a variety of current events topics, including some political buyer's remorse, which, by the way, I don't think there is any of. We will have reviews, short ones anyway, of Star Trek Lower Decks, What If, and Stargirl. And we'll talk about what is in the Tales from SYL Ranch Darkroom this week. And pretty much anything else that you might not happen to talk about, I'm happy to talk to you about it with. Well, this is, of course, a live stream, so you're free to talk with me about anything that you want in chat. You can ask me any question, whether it's political, social, the virus whose name I can't mention without risking this video getting banned, United States Civil War II, or even better, things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superheroes, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal subjects that I won't discuss, but pretty much anything else is fair game. I will get to my viewers, as many of them as humanly possible, with the understanding that I don't really want this thing to run longer than about 2 hours. As my regular viewers know, my regular viewers know, the last month has been an interesting time for me in terms of having problems with my sciatic nerve and lower back that nobody's entirely certain if it'll completely go away. But the deal is I haven't done a 3-hour stream. I let off doing any streams for 3 weeks. In fact, I haven't done a 3-hour stream for some time. Don't expect that I'll be doing a 3-hour stream anytime soon. 2 hours is going to be about my limit at this point. But to make up for it, I do have some fun stuff coming out in the dark room to maybe, take the edge off. So, of course, we must, as always, answer the question that nobody asked. What are this week's virus statistics for Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live? Well, as always, I do source this with the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Health Department website. Link to that website, as always, below. I would certainly suggest that even if you're not particularly interested in Nebraska statistics, and I understand a lot of people wouldn't be, you might want to go and take a look at the website, because I've been to a lot of different websites that deal with virus statistics, and the one that Nebraska has is probably the best anybody I've seen, the way they put the information together. So go have a look at it just to see, amazingly, how some government agency is actually doing it right for once. Guess it happens. Now, some of my statistics that I'm going to use are not quite the same as the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Health Department, but that's because I'm using a more accurate count of the county's population. They're using the 2010 census, and when you consider that in the half of my lifetime or so that I didn't live in this city, it doubled its size. Clearly, 10 years is going to be significant. How significant, we don't know yet. We don't have those numbers for the 2020 census. But, it's clearly gone up some. So I've got a site that estimates the approximation there. All of these statistics were updated on 4:51 p.m. Central Time here in the United States where I live. The total Lancaster County population is at approximately 324,216. The total number of Lancaster County deaths from this virus is now up to 266. That is up 13 from last week, and this continues a not statistically insignificant, it's small numbers, but not statistically insignificant uptick from a downward peak that we've been having for some weeks. I think we can assume that probably at some point they'll do mask orders. I don't know whether they'll get away with that or not. I assume they will. We have, after all, so willingly and gleefully handing over complete control of our bodies to our people in government. They have found a situation that they have been working on for decades and decades and decades in the United States. You are now fully 100% owned by them. They will never let you take the mask off, because it means they give back some of the power that you gave them. And that never, ever, ever happens. Anyway, we are seeing a statistical increase that's not inconsequential here. I do not know what to blame it on. I have No idea. Not that I couldn't make an educated guess, but I'd be stupid to make an educated guess on this one. I don't know what this is coming from. The one thing our website doesn't do is like break down infections by the number of people who have the various variants. And if you've got, the new cases this week, how many of them were from variants? Were they Delta? Is it something, what's happening here, right? But we don't know that. We don't know anything about that. So we don't know what to blame it on. This is one of those instances where they need to have better stats. We need to be able to see on that website. I need to be able to go in and look at the different variants and how many cases we've got of that. I mean, are the current cases that we're seeing an uptick on, are those variants? Is that the Delta variant? I don't know, because they don't show it in their freaking mathematics. You can't do the numbers if you're missing some of the variables. Anyway, regardless of that, the fact that we're up to 266 is not something that makes me happy. But by the same token, we're still talking very low numbers, because when you compare it against the number of people who died of heart disease in only one year alone in Lancaster County was 485 people in 2019. That's the most recent data I can get statistics for. You may feel free to call those Looney Tunes at the county offices and try to get new statistics, because that wasn't easy getting that one. But hey, we can kind of figure, heart disease is the number one killer in the United States, the number one killer in, Nebraska, probably the same amount of deaths in any given year, give or take a few. Hey, Robert Dixon, nice to see you here tonight. Have they created tests that differentiate yet? I don't know the answer to that. All I do on this section of the show is A, kind of wait for people to come in. But B, I just am reporting the statistics I get off of my Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department website, and then I do math with them. I don't trust their math to be particularly accurate. I don't trust their math to be particularly accurate, and I know that they're making things look better and underplay things by using too low a number for our population by I don't know how much. When you have a city that doubled in size over the course of my lifetime, a decade is meaningful. So I don't know how much precisely, I can only guess it. But they're screwing with the numbers that way, they're screwing with the numbers other ways. I don't know about any of the tests they've got at this stage of the game. Drop of Truth. Hey, Drop of Truth. How's life treating you? Totalitarian state where you are, it's going very well in Melbourne and more so in Sydney and Australia. We haven't had to deal with that yet. Given what we've got and the uptick numbers we're seeing, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody in Nebraska or Lincoln tried to do a mask order, and I don't know how whether that would necessarily be successful. We're pretty sick of it at this point. And one thing that our people in government don't get is that a lot of people are flat busted broke because you destroyed the economy, stupid. So I don't know whether it's going to happen. I wouldn't be shocked, given the amount of increases we've seen in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I wouldn't be shocked if they did something like that here on the state level. I mean, anyway, if we do this comparison, it just means that in almost 1 3/4 years worth of the virus, still in Lancaster County, the number of people who've died from this virus are just slightly more than half the number that died of heart disease in only 2019. So if the virus is a pandemic here in Lancaster County, Nebraska, then heart disease is just plain an ongoing health catastrophe. The total number of Lancaster County confirmed cases is now at 34,868, which is up 1,002 from last week. This continues a significant continued uptick from what had been a flattening out to nothing trend. The number of positive cases classified as recovered is now at 31,214, which is up 39 from last week. That's always a good number. Anytime your number goes up some for recoveries, we like this. I don't understand entirely what this classification of recovered means. because it could mean 100% completely recovered. It could have meant, walked away with some serious lung issues or other things that we've heard about. I don't know what that means, recovered. So we'll just take it to assume, all right, well, these are people who didn't die and are considered fully recovered. But since there are only 266 deaths, and you do a little math on this, you discover that there's probably about 3,388 people who exist in some sort of Schrodinger's cat-style limbo as both simultaneously alive and dead. And that is, by the way, 950 more people this week who are considered fully alive. So that's a good thing. Drop 2 says the Northern Hemisphere is about to head into flu season and natural detox. Yes, expect severe lockdowns in my big cities. Well, they're already starting it. They've got that thing going on in New York City. Bunch of pansy-ass cowards who live there that don't do anything about that. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Wouldn't be surprised. Interesting thing about this here, the total number of completed vaccinations is now at 180,289, which is up 2,675 from last week. The percentage of the population that has therefore been fully vaccinated is 55.608%, up 0.825% from last week. This has just essentially leveled off to statistical insignificance. It's about the only thing we've had in the last few weeks that has. But the number of people who are, dying of it compared to cases the number of people who are considered fully vaccinated, people, giant spike at the beginning, and then you get back down to basically nothing at this point. Jeanette, hi, nice to thank you. Thank you very much. My town went nuts again. Which one? I don't always. Are we talking about Lincoln, or are you talking about the statistical increases? Yes, kind of. Yeah. Drop 2 says Biden is bringing the U.S. Armed Forces home to help with your lockdowns. U.S. citizens have lots of guns. Australia are pretty much disarmed. I don't know that he would need any armed forces for lockdowns. It used to be said that Americans would prefer to die on their feet than live on their knees. And we have now become a country that would prefer to grovel on our knees rather than die under any circumstances. So anyhow, we have had some increases, and they've been statistically non-trivial. But you always have to look at it from a statistics versus real world perspective. Oh, the mandate? Had they done something again with Lincoln that I didn't notice about? I go out so infrequently. I went out once today for a while. I don't always notice. I'll have to take a look and see what the hell has happened. Half a second while I just do, because I always want to. So we'll just look Lincoln, Nebraska masks on DuckDuckGo.com, of course. 2026 is an indoor mask mandate in effect. The directed health measure requiring masks indoors. This is the 26th. Oh, good. It was today. At 9:44 a.m., so thank you for catching that. I didn't, which is weird. I went out today and never had a problem with it. Okay. Directed health measure requiring masks indoors in Lincoln and Lancaster County went into effect Thursday morning. It will continue through September 30th, another goddamn month, when it'll be reevaluated. The mask mandate was brought back by the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department in response to an increase in COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Yes, we had a non-trivial increase, no question about it. It was a non-trivial increase. But the thing is, I'll get to that in a second, just in terms of who was being tested and stuff. So, meanwhile, as it's written here on the KOLN website, DHM requires all individuals ages 2 and older, regardless of vaccination status, to wear a mask when they are indoors space unless 6 feet of separation from others at all times can be achieved. The DHM requires business owners to ensure their patrons ages 2 and older wear masks anytime they cannot maintain 6 feet of separation and non-household members. So, yeah, we got another one. Thanks for letting me know, Jeanette. Have a second there with Drop of Truth. I'm going to read off the actual mandate that they have posted here. Mask mandate in big letters. I put it up, but people ages 2 and up, regardless of vaccination status, must wear a mask indoors. Must wear a mask, in all indoor settings, venues, gatherings, and public and private businesses, unless you're able to maintain at least 6 feet of distance from one individual at all times. Or in all schools, child care facilities, before and after school programs, day camps, in healthcare settings, including long-term care facilities, in all indoor sport venues, unless you as an individual are engaged in exercise, and on all forms of public transits. We still, of course, have the same ridiculous ones that you did. We don't have to. Let me pull this up so that it's closer to where it's underneath the screen. Let me scroll it up here so it's big enough to see. We don't have to use masks if one of the following is true. We are eating or drinking or seated to eat and drink. That was one that never made any damn sense. Go on into the restaurant, wear your mask until you sit down. Because, yeah. Those exercising, yeah. So, like, if you're in a track meet and you're as long as you're just the one, anyway, all right. Those engaged in an occupation that prevents the wearing of a mask. So if none of this really applies if you've got a job where you can take off the mask. Those obtaining a service or purchasing goods or services that require the temporary removal of the mask. A person giving a speech, lecture, or broadcast to an audience as long as 6 feet of different distance from other individuals is maintained. Those individuals who cannot wear a mask because of a medical condition, a mental health condition, or a disability that prevents wearing masks. Courts of law, meetings or sessions of the Nebraska legislature, individuals accessing federal, state, county, or city government services, congregate living settings, group homes, and residential drug and or mental health treatment facilities or shelters. Those are what we've got to do now in Lincoln again. No big mandate. Jeff says, yeah, they spelled the word force wrong. Yeah, exactly. Well, Drop 2 says, want the true totalitarianism and look at New Zealand now. PM Jacinda Ard, I'm going to have to put on my glasses to make see if that's an RN or an M. Ardern, who got Freemasonic scholarship, locked the whole country down for one case of the virus. Yes, I was aware of what they'd done in New Zealand. It's pure insanity. Drop of Truth also says that's not the most horrible thing to happen in New Zealand. Abortion now up to birth is, now allowable for any reason. Sent me a link on Twitter. I haven't had a chance to look at it very hard. I've been doing other things this last week. So lucky you got my version of having of the Superman short up this week. Okay, so anyway, with all of that crap rattled off and said, when you actually look at our statistics and where they've become meaningful, when we've seen spikes, when we've seen things going up and down, what you actually see is a spike well before the vaccination was available, right? It spiked up and started going back down, and then the vaccination was available. And you didn't really see much of a difference. It still kept going down the same way it did. It didn't suddenly drop off to nothing. And now, with well over 50% of the city or of the county vaccinated, we still have mask orders because we still have numbers increasing. What is the point of a vaccine if it doesn't do anything? Anyway, deaths here as a percentage of confirmed cases is now at 0.762%, up 0.009% from last week. This number is actually statistically identical or very similar. Deaths as a percent of the population is at 0.08204%, which is up 0.00404% from last week. This is, unfortunately, the first time that this percentage has gone above 0.08%. So we're closing in on 0.1%. Not there yet. We sat a long time in the sevens. So it's slowly going up. But the number really, if you look at it, has been statistically identical since we got out of the 0.3 or 4 range, 0.04 range or something like that. It's been statistically identical since then. Jeff said, what's the point? Thank you. Well said, Jeff says. Well, you know, that's the question you ask all the time with these. What's the damn point? And the point's very simple. To get you terrified so that you will hand over total control of your body to power-mad, sociopathic narcissists. And it doesn't matter what was going on here, right? Ultimately, this was going to happen. It's going to keep happening. You will never be given control of your body back because power-mad, sociopathic narcissists never, ever, ever willingly give their power back. You can give it to them, but then you got to shoot to get it back. That's the way this works. So it doesn't matter what my specific things here may be. It was always going to be like this. For some reason or another. It was always going to be like this. Interesting numbers, too. Some I don't usually put up here, but are interesting to me because of the way the math works out. The total number of individuals, discrete individuals who've been tested is at 205,026. This is up 3,302 from last week. That is a statistically large number of people. This means, so far, to date, we have had 63.237% of the county's population that has been tested. So over 50% of it has been inoculated, given what they think is a complete inoculation. But more than 60% have been tested. And I don't quite know what to make of this. Now, admittedly, I'm kind of I'm a strange old hermit living across the Dune Sea. Admittedly, I don't get out a lot. I don't really have any reason to get out a lot. That's why I didn't know we had a mask mandate until it was pointed out to me because I go out so infrequently. I don't know anybody that's been tested for this. Over 60% of the population has been tested. 60% of the population. Surely we should all know someone. 50% of the population has been tested. 60%. Almost 64%. 63.237. We should all know somebody who's been tested. I don't know anybody. Does anybody know anybody? Because I don't. Weird number. Good night, Jeanette. Nice to see you here as long as you can. Thanks very much for dropping in. Always like to see you. Please feel free to come back and get what other numbers there are. But even more interesting than that, right? We know for a fact that we have 3,302 newly tested individuals this week, right? And we know that we had 31,880 tests this week. From last Thursday to this Thursday was 31,880 tests. And each of these tests would then have been performed on one of 3,302 individuals, because that's the number of new cases we had, right? So newly tested individuals, right? All of those tests against that small a number of people, you discover that on average, each and every one of them this week took approximately 9.655 tests each. Over 9 tests each is what these guys average out to. Now, that's an average. Oh, Jeanette, well, good. I know somebody who knows somebody if somebody's been tested. So awesome. Glad to know that. Cool. At least that number makes certain level of sense. Anyway, all of these people this week, on average, were given 9 tests. Okay, so that's not really, that's not what an average works out to. If you break it down, it's going to be the number of tests divided by the number of people. So if 5 people had only 2 tests or 3, probably 3. A minimum would probably be 3. If I'd gotten one that said I was positive, I want another one just to make sure. Second one came back positive. Probably I'm going to say, can we do a third one just to make sure? So probably the lowest number anybody out of those 3,000 some people got 3 tests, but that means that some other number of them got 10 tests, 12 tests, 15 tests. For it to work out to that number is amazing. An average of 9.655 tests per person this week. Drop of 2 says your folks had the AstraZeneca jab this week. It's not an mRNA vax with graphene oxide and no cost like the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Well, my mom's had it, though in her case it makes more medical sense because she has a pre-existing condition that, if there was any kind of upper respiratory infection at all, you run the risk of her getting pneumonia and dying. I live with her, but if I got some kind of upper respiratory, if I got the flu of any kind, headed straight to a motel room because I would not want to give that to my mom. Anyhow, that is our stat this week for Lancaster County, Nebraska. I did have some other sort of current events stuff that I wanted to talk about. Yesterday or early this morning, I forgot, I guess it was this morning, Project Veritas came out with a interesting video called DHS Insider Blows Whistle on International Child Sex Trafficking Gangs Exploiting a Reasonable Fear Loophole. I've got a link for this in my description box below. Certainly suggest that you go over and take a look at it. And another one come out today. Second DHS whistleblower claims it's impossible to deny work visa renewals. Also, link for that in my description box. Drop 2 says what concerns you most is your mom is on the 12+ drugs for her kidney transplant. Well, there's a medical reason I haven't gotten it, and I'm not on. I don't have any of that. So yeah, I can see where that'd be worrying. Anyway, Project Veritas came out with these 2. I often like to say I have an open challenge to anybody who watches the show, whether you're a regular viewer or not. Give me any news source, preferably print with a website so that I can put it up next to me and show it. But any source, any article, and in about 30 minutes I will prove one of 3 things. That the event being reported never happened, or that it didn't happen as reported, or that when you strip away the slick interface, the emotionally loaded language, the opinion, and the filler, you're left with very few facts indeed. And I had, to this date, been generally pretty happy with Project Veritas. It's not structured the same way, but you're still hearing, people in their own voices. If they have somebody like they did on these 2 who are inside the DHS, they'll black out their face and they'll do their voices. Guys at Project Veritas, I got to tell you something. You suck at that. You really suck at that. All I have to do is, grab the recordings with 4K video downloader, which is a thing you can get to pull down videos. You can pull down just the audio if you want to. Pull that down, pull it up in Audacity, and decrease the speed, decrease the tempo. That's all you got to do, guys. You are not doing a good job at this, because if I can do that, that means everybody that these guys work with can do that, and they know who they were the moment that video went up. Anyhow, aside from that, they had generally been just recordings of things that are people saying and happening, right? And you just kind of have, willingly suspend your disbelief that these people are who they say they are, which in most cases, as far as I know, we're dealing with people who lose their jobs and stuff. So I think they're the people that they say they are. So I've generally been kind of happy with them. Yesterday's video, they did something that slides them closer to non-journalism. And that was, they had this person talking, blacked out face, somebody from DHS, I think it was. Blacked out face, black body, voice badly messed with. This individual, they were having underneath it subtitles, right? Perfectly fine when you're messing with somebody's voice electronically. Subtitles are a good thing to have. But then they went and they did something bad. Instead of just having the subtitles scrolling past, they would put the subtitles were in white, and parts of the sentences they would outline as it's going through. They would outline in red, in such a way that if you took those red highlighted words and put them together, they would make their own sentence. Okay, this is bad. Okay, this is very bad. I'm a little surprised to see you guys doing this because you are inserting opinion again. You are saying this part of the sentence, and it may very well be grammatically that's the case. This part of the sentence over here is more important than this part of the sentence over here. So we're going to highlight this part of it, and maybe we'll highlight a piece of it down here, but not, the whole thing. So people can walk away having just picked out these two pieces, fragments of a sentence. Okay, that's bad. That's when you take away the slick interface, the emotionally loaded language, the opinion, and the filler time. That's off in number 3. When you're doing that, you're not doing good journalism anymore. Point your cam and shut up is the best thing that you can do for most breaking events. But if you're doing an interview like this one, well, do something better with the voice, because those guys have no anonymity with you at all. But even then, if we say, okay, well, the voice anonymity is okay, even if it was, which it isn't, even if the voice anonymity was okay, when you start doing stuff like that, highlighting parts and fragments of sentences to form their own new sentence, you are injecting your own opinion. The emotionally loaded language, that's a visual version of emotionally loaded language where you're taking something and highlighting it out so it stands out to the viewer. Bad. Very bad. Stop doing it, Project Veritas. Quit doing this. You're going to enter the realm of every other news service on this planet if you keep doing that. Don't do it. Stop. Stop making any changes whatsoever. You got all the quotes you need. You don't need to opinionize about it by pulling out fragments of the quotes. Stop doing it. You're sliding off towards being just another crappy news outlet. Drop of Truth says the Wood Royal Commission here in Australia since 2012 found 28 politicians / prominent judicial higher-ups visited by a, quote, boy brothel, end quote, in King Cross, Sydney. This list won't be released for 90 years. Wow. Sounds like you got a President Kennedy assassination thing going on there. Drop of Truth said the reason the list wasn't publicized was because it would provoke a loss of faith in the judiciary in the minds of the public. No kidding. Well, when you got stuff that's it's basically set up so that it's run by power-mad sociopathic narcissists, this is what you get. So yeah, there's that. Stop doing this, guys. Stop doing it. I saw it the moment that you did it the very first time, and I went, no, please don't keep doing this through. Oh, you did it through the whole video. Stop doing it. People are smart enough to read or hear what they hear and come to their own conclusions. They don't need you building sentences for them that didn't previously exist. You got the quotes. Leave it at that. Other thing we can talk about is a buyer's remorse. I've been watching a lot of right-wing pundits and listening to them and reading tweets. And of course, because the Biden presidency has to date been a complete and utter waste of time and a failure in everything that they've done, to the point where not even the press can cover for them much anymore. The press has started to get a little bit hardball with them, not incredibly so, but a little bit. It's been such a giant debacle that some people on the right are saying, okay, all right, do the Democrats to the left have buyer's remorse now? And they assume that the answer is yes. I'm here to tell you guys, it is not. they no more have buyer's remorse than the left did for the right did rather for a really terrible president. Well, there was buyer's remorse for Nixon. What's a not a good? I don't think we've had anybody on the right who's this just absolutely. I think you could make sort of a parallel between George W. Bush and this. George W. Bush was not, in my opinion, a great president. He was doing whatever it was he thought was necessary in the aftermath of 9/11. I mean, that's his whole presidency. But some of the things he did, like getting the U.S. into a non-ending war that's just ending now, for example, not a good thing. Even if you took it and said there's, a president who's real bad, and I'm not saying that there's been a Republican that has, but even if you say there's been a president who's really bad, the right won't get buyer's remorse for it, because they'll look back to the election and they'll say, okay, what were my choices? Well, a bunch of people like libertarians who can't win. Forget about them. I'm never voting for them, because that's what always happens. And then the other one was, okay, we can vote for, literal Hitler, because that's what they'd been convinced by a lying press that Trump was literal Hitler. So they said, okay, well, we got nobody that can win. We got literal Hitler. Oh, we've got this old dude who probably isn't going to last out his term. I'm sure nobody voted for that guy said to themselves, yeah, we're definitely going to see this last out one term. So when you give them that choice versus pointless or horrible literal Hitler, no, they're not going to have buyer's remorse. They will never have buyer's remorse on this. And I honestly think it's a little tough to blame them for things like their primary. That was a fixed primary. It was fixed. The one who really should have won that would have been probably Bernie. I just look, because I just moved out of Iowa when that vote happened, and I look at what was done with that primary vote, and it's just, or in their case, the caucuses. With those caucus votes, it was utterly ridiculous. At no time in Iowa's history at all did the Democratic Party ever have a problem. You may remember Iowa turned into a giant debacle. Never has Iowa ever had a problem before or after that. Never had the Democratic Party had a problem before or after that. The Republican Party has never had a problem at all. What they did there had to have been intentional, in my opinion. Looking at what happened and the timeline and the way that it was badly broken down, I have to assume that it was intentional, that the Democrats intentionally did that. Because there was some good chance. I mean, I have lots of friends, liberal friends in Iowa. They were all voting for Bernie. They were all going to caucus for Bernie. And there's ways that you can fiddle around with the way the caucus numbers come up and whether or not he was ever actually in the running. But the real thing about the Iowa caucuses is there's one purpose. They only have one purpose. And it's not what Iowans like to fool themselves into, thinking that it means they're somehow special because they're first in the nation. It's not. The only thing that thing does is gives a publicity bump to whomever wins. If Bernie had been bumped on that, been bumped up, gotten to the national spotlight because he won, it would be much, much harder to fix other people's primaries. Having watched what they did in Iowa, I can only have to say that it was intentional, and there were probably also a lot of other fixed stuff going on with that primary. So I don't think you can necessarily even say it was the voters, the primary voters, who said, okay, we don't care. Let's put a guy who's obviously got some level of dementia in. He's a name everybody knows, so blah, blah, blah. So I don't really blame Democratic primary voters. I don't think that it turned out the way that they wanted. I certainly didn't think like that after a week or two after the caucuses were over, because they couldn't get the results overnight like they had every year to that point and have since. So I don't blame them. And I would more blame the general election voters. You guys, it was not exactly hard to see what you were getting here. You were getting a guy who was having cognitive problems, is having cognitive problems, and I don't know how long we'll go on having cognitive problems until he's eventually removed from office. Whether it's by the 25th Amendment or some other means, I don't know. I assume it'll be the 25th. Maybe he'll just, resign or something like that. But either way, you knew going in that this was going to happen, right? I mean, this is a foregone conclusion. Everybody knew it. So the voters on that level I can blame. But do they have buyer's remorse? No, they don't, and they never will. Because from their perspective, it was either elder abuse or literal Hitler. Well, they're going to go with elder abuse every time. This guy's going to get screwed up and probably have to resign and stuff. But at least he's not going to kill 6 million Jews, which is what they were faced with, they thought. Dropper 2 says, Ronald Reagan was a military-industrial complex puppet as much as George H.W. Bush. Oh, they all have been. There isn't a single one in my lifetime that isn't. Suicides since March 2021 are greater than 6 times the virus deaths. I don't know how many who have died because the hospitals are not providing cancer treatments, organ transplant, and other life-saving operations. Yes, plenty of dancing nurse videos and empty ICUs, though. Yeah, well, they're still, our press is now back to reporting locally that we have, that all of our hospitals are strained to overflowing. And once again, when you talk to my healthcare professionals, as I did last week for my regular diabetes checkup, no, all lies. Every last one of it's lies. Our hospital wards are still empty. So despite the fact that we had a significant increase in the number of cases and a statistically significant increase in the number of deaths, do I think there will ever be a fair election in the U.S. again? Probably not. Probably not. This last one was the last time you could probably have fixed the problem. The only way to fix it now, the only way we can fix it now, is to have the Republican Party misuse what's now in the system as additional attack vectors. They should misuse it badly, like really skew things for a couple of elections. Nothing they can get caught about, but make it clear to the Democrats that they're not the only ones capable of exploiting attack vectors. They should then have a fight with themselves. The deal is you want to keep them both for some number of elections, constantly screwing around with these new attack vectors to the point where eventually they say to each other, okay, stop, we got to put an end to this because you're able to manipulate things over here. I'm able to manipulate those things over here. Okay, so what do you say we stop manipulating, we put some additional laws in practice? That's, I think, what would have to happen, is both sides to fight about it, to intentionally screw up the outcome of elections in ways that are just essentially inconceivable. Both of them to do it constantly for a while. And after a while, when they get sick of losing their power in a way that they don't like having to deal with, they will eventually probably put some laws on it. But until that time, or maybe never, they may never do it, until something like that happens, a fair election, in terms of representing the will of the people, probably not so much, although it won't necessarily feel like it was unfair. But in terms of the sheer number of attack vectors that are now present in our elections that weren't present prior to 2020, if I made my money getting someone elected, I'd probably screw with the attack vectors. I'd probably take advantage of them. Drop Drew says, any natural disasters such as fires, earthquakes, floods, etc., happening near me? No, not near me. It rarely happens, to be honest. Things just vacillate between hot and cold, like it's 90-something out now. What is this? Is this me? Hang on, I gotta see what's beeping at me for some no good reason. Okay. So anyway, I don't. There's nothing going on near me. It's like 100 and something degrees out today. I didn't go out and do the lines. I didn't want to deal with the heat and the humidity. But give it a week. Drop of Jews asking, remember Kamala Harris supported the Biden U.S. troop withdrawal for Afghanistan. That commitment backfired on her. Jeff says, FYI, a Representative Madison Cawthorn at of course, a 2-hour breaking. I just formally requested the U.S. Cabinet invoke the 25th Amendment. Though Joe Biden does not simply have a pattern of poor decision making. That just happened, huh? Wow. I'm not shocked. I mean, it was either that or have him resign. I hope that he will just resign. The problem with doing this now is a little different from when Nixon resigned. Nixon had lost support of his party, and because of the aftermath of what happened there and continued on, frankly, to this very present day, nobody is ever going to give up on their president ever again. The Republican Party got permanently tarnished by Richard Nixon. And the Democrats learned their lesson, and I think the Republicans did too. You never give up on somebody who's in office, period, end of story. You never, ever, ever do, because it tarnishes your whole party. So I think what he needs to do, as soon as he probably can, and I assume people are telling them this, is to resign. Don't put the party in a position where they're going to have to back somebody who is clearly suffering from senile dementia. It would be better if he just resigned. Drop of Two says, at least Jeff Hagel, that bodes ill for the U.S. Maybe not. Kamala Harris has the same level of compassion as her idol Joseph Stalin. I don't know how the hell you get to this point, right? I was going to mention something about that with the Afghan surrender. By the way, I'm always of the opinion you should use real names for things. This is what we call a surrender, guys. We're here you go. It's yours. Bye-bye. We have surrendered. So when you get a surrender like this, you can do it in a way that will hopefully pull out as many of your collaborators and personnel as humanly possible, while simultaneously destroying any infrastructure, any tank, any gun, any round. You destroy them all on your way out so that the enemy has nothing to use. They have to build it up all on their own. Wouldn't have been that terrifyingly complex to do it. So I don't quite know what's going through their brains. I mean, yeah, Biden's at the top of the food chain. There's no question about that. He's definitely at the top of the food chain, but you don't generally make plans and stuff in a vacuum. I mean, that's why we have all of these different, cabinet positions and stuff. I mean, you may not know it, but I'm sure they have had withdrawal plans for 20 years, right? I'm sure they've had it, because militaries are constantly coming up with plans for every possible conceivable alternative, even if that alternative is 1,000 to 1. You don't want to wind up where you suddenly have to do something. You have no plan at all. You have to make it up on the fly. They have plans like this constantly changing. And I'm sure that somebody somewhere at the Pentagon or something like that has had plans that would do this in an orderly way, get as many people out as possible while destroying all of our own infrastructure and weapons that we might leave behind. I'm sure that there's a plan for that, and I'm sure that there has been for a couple of decades now. It would be weird if it hadn't. So I look at it and I go, okay, well, right, all right, so Biden, he should know, even if he's kind of losing it, that the president doesn't make these plans. Even the one he's using now was not a plan he personally came up with. Somebody came up with this and he signed off on it. That's the way these always work. It's been a long, long time since you had an actual general or somebody with military experience who could say, okay, I like the look of this plan, or let's change this or that or the other part of it. No, they just look at the ones that are given to them, and they say, okay, well, what's the odds? What are we going to get out of this plan? What are we going to get out of that plan? Okay, we'll go with this one. Why you would go, why Biden would think it would be a good idea, even if he's out of his mind, the people around him who are actually calling the shots, why they would think it's a good idea. The only way that I can see the people around him thinking that it was okay to give him this is if they wanted him gone. I guess maybe that was the intent. You don't do this stuff in a vacuum as president. You have all this stuff fed to you, and you decide between different possible options. Somebody fed him this along with a whole bunch of other good ones, and the people around him must have said, let's give him this shit one, because everybody will want his ass when he does that. Maybe that's what happened. I'm scratching my head trying to figure out why you would do this. Given that there must have been numerous other plans out there, why do you do this? I guess if you're trying to get rid of the guy, so you feed him the really bad plan. I don't know. I don't know that that's going on or not. But if the Democrats want to salvage anything after this massive debacle, he just needs to resign, period. Don't let it get to the 25th Amendment. Don't put the party itself in the position of having to support someone totally unsupportable. Otherwise, they risk being tarnished for the rest of their existence, the same as the Republicans. Let's see, back up a bit. Sorry, I'm looking up here to see where we're at. Kamala, how mean. Lovely. I'm sure Al-Qaeda will love her. Hey, man, don't say anything bad about Kamala. Kamala, the Ugandan giant. That Kamala. Drop 2 saying same puppeteers, military industrial complex, big pharma, central banks, different puppets. Yes. Jeff Hagler says, agreed, military should have been in the very last to go out the door and kill the lights upon exit. And in my case, I think killing the lights on exit means bombing everything in sight. Literally turn out the lights, and as you're flying away, bomb the hell out of what you just flew away from. I mean, bomb the airport, bomb anywhere that we had anything to do with. Just tell them outright, it's going to be bombed at 6 p.m., get the hell away. Jeff says, yes, there was a plan. This was the plan to pull the U.S. off the international stage, knock us down a notch or two, and make us look bad in the process. I don't know for sure. I don't think for the most part, no matter what they might dribble on about, I think for the most part, your average politician on the national stage actually wants to bring the U.S. down a peg. I don't think they generally do. You can get some unusual ones, like Barack Obama. But I don't think in general they want to, because it decreases their own personal power. You always have to remember, these are people who are looking for nothing but power. It's what they spend all the time doing. They look for power. They seek power. They battle with each other to get more power and to keep it as long as they possibly can. If you take the institution that gives them their power, the federal government, and you make it look bad, it actually decreases the potential power they can have. So I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Drop 2 says, the British and Australian military are still there in Afghanistan helping their troops and Afghanis that were associated with them. Yes, this whole thing was ridiculous. The general in charge of this was more concerned with CRT, diversion and misdirection. I haven't watched it that closely other than to look at it and go, oh, this reminds me exactly like the fall of Saigon. Exactly like the fall of Saigon. Which is why I look at it and I go, people who are sitting, with stars on their shoulder boards, these are not dummies. I have, I'm not sure I should say specifically, but I have an individual in my fairly direct family lineage, somebody I spent a lot of time with, not a lot, but enough time when he was growing up, my kid's age. And he's going to be a soldier, probably a Marine. We keep after him to please, for God's sake, go to NROTC, get be an officer. Trust me, it'll be better. But he's the right kid to be an officer, by the way. He's worried that if he becomes an officer, he's worried about having to make all those big calls. And I've told him the fact that you worry about it means that you're the right person to have those jobs. But he knows more about military history than I could ever possibly. I mean, I probably could. He's young, but still, he knows a lot about military history. It's impossible for me to imagine that generals didn't look at how Saigon fell and said to themselves, let's not do it that way again. And yet here we are, still inside of my lifetime, doing it that exact way again. Like I say, how do you get this plan out of anybody who's been paying attention for 50-some years? Yes, Strapatu says, meanwhile, the U.S. military left $88 billion worth of armaments, ordnance, vehicles, including drones in Afghanistan, shades of the Iraqi withdrawal. Yes, left our technology, Jeff says. Here's the keys. Jeebus, yeah, exactly. You don't state absolutes, only guesses. Well, all anyone can ever do on any of this stuff is guess. Unless you're sitting in those meetings in the White House, we can only guess. I just look at it as a reasonably intelligent guy who never wants to be president, by the way. If you were to draft me as president, I would spend my entire time trying to think about ways to escape. But we won't know. Nobody can know for sure. I just, as somebody looking outside, I go, who came up with the same thing that got Saigon? Jeff says, power is like crack to them, never enough. Yes, that's exactly right. Drop 2 says, at least at the end of the Vietnam War, was it a war? Yeah, I'm a whole other thing. But the U.S. destroyed the military vehicles and took the ammunition. Yes, it seems kind of like, rule number 1, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so if you're going to have to leave material behind, put it in one place, a big pile of it. And on your way out, as you've taken off from the landing strip, bomb the landing strip, and then bomb your big pile of weapons. Repeatedly bomb it. Bomb it until there's nothing but sand left. Seems like the obvious thing to do to me. So like I say, why in the world anybody would bring this to the president? It just has me scratching my head. Why would anybody bring this plan to the president? What? I'm having a little difficulty seeing my thing down here. Okay. Drop 2 says at least, Drop 2 says, I think it was Kissinger who said, power is the greatest aphrodisiac. I always just go straight back to Lord Acton. He said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men. I think he had it more than anything else. It's the same thing when you get into, and the stuff I like talking about more than anything on here. When you get into Lord of the Rings, I mean, that's the whole thing. Is that this ring represents power, and it's something that will corrupt the person that has it. It's the same way in real life. I'm absolutely certain that was intentional on Tolkien's part. So I just sitting here and gibbering about it. The only way that this makes any kind of sense to me is if somebody, and I don't know who those somebodies are, said, here's what we do. We get the plan that, he's obviously going to become a liability. So let's get the plan out of storage that they were using at the fall of Saigon, take away some of the more important parts, like getting rid of your materiel, and use that. Because then it'll look like he did something exceptionally stupid, and we can hand him anything. He's like the governor in Blazing Saddles. What the hell is it that I'm signing? Oh, the William J. Lepedamine gambling casino for the criminally insane. You can put anything in front of him. He'll sign it at this point. One of the earliest ones he actually signed, he was on a hot mic and asked what he was signing. Clearly, you can put anything in front of him. So, Kamala came over with the worst of all possible plans to get out. Said, "This is good, Mr. President. Sign here. Think about your secretary." Okay. And he just signed it. And so that puts him in the position of, oh, okay, my bad, except that my bad is barely comprehensible. So it's easy to then go, okay, here's the deal, Joe. We're sorry we got you president. We know you're not up to it. It's obvious to everybody in sight. You need to resign now, or else things are going to get bad for the party. And they can say, okay, he realized that he'd made some bad calls and was really not feeling up to it. Needed to spend more time with his family, and so he resigned. And Kamala, the Ugandan giant, was sworn in. Maybe it was intentional. It's so hard for me to imagine something that would cost so many lives and be so exceptionally stupid. I don't put it past them as doing it intentionally. I don't put it past them. But my God, that would require a whole other level of willingness to deal in death than most of the time they're really capable of even foreseeing it. They can deal with statistics. You can have people buying U.S. planes and killing X number of people over there. It's okay to deal with that statistic. But when you're dealing with, okay, we're going to let a bunch of Americans die and a bunch of American allies, we're just going to let them, die in the worst possible ways, getting grabbed by a bunch of terrorists and, probably tortured and stuff. We're just going to let that happen. Which is what you would have to say if you're saying, okay, they slipped this little one over to Biden because they knew it would be a way to get him out. Not that I wouldn't put it past them, but that is a level of cold-bloodedness that ordinarily they try to hide. Drop 2 says, sorry, it was Henry Kissinger. Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and the greatest power is not money power, but political power. Yeah, you have political power. You have any other kind of power you want. Jeff Hagler says, it's good to be the king. Yes. Wrong movie, same actor. Yes. Blazing Saddles, our new sheriff is, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. I've been watching, people who watch me very long know that one of my guilty pleasures, and it's not so guilty anymore because there's so many of them, I have a hard time feeling bad about something that hundreds of thousands of other people are watching. But there are people now who are starting to react to Blazing Saddles. And that is fascinating. Because, of course, I saw the movie a long time ago. I was probably too young to get in to see it when it first aired. I don't remember what it was rated. But, I mean, you had, swearing and racial epithets and stuff. So I was probably older. Saw it somewhere. But then, of course, it started moving into TV, and so all of those words were generally left with silence, or a horse, braying, or, woman screaming and stuff like that. But the people who react to this are reacting to it as originally released, right? And it's really fascinating. Because as somebody who, half the reason that I'm watching this with these reactors is that I want to see how do these older films, particularly science fiction films, how do they hold up well to modern eyes? Right? I mean, you can take something like Star Wars. Across the board, everybody who watches it goes, wow, that is way better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be cheesy, or I was going to have to make concessions for the era in terms of the special effects and all that. One of them, I'll find her reactions here sometime and put them in my description when I'm done. But Chanel Riccio, I think, and she has reacted to the Star Wars despecialized edition. Those are awesome. By the way, if you've never seen the despecialized edition, go freaking find them. They're Star Wars 1, 2, and 3, but they're restored to their release condition. So, like, for example, the big Lucasfilm logo isn't present. It's just the words Lucasfilm Limited. And there's, in New Hope, there is no episode number or title. It just starts with the crawl. So she started doing those, and they all say, even when she was doing it, that, she was fortunate. They, excised all of the CGI that had been added by George Lucas later. It tends to, frankly, make it look dated. And she said, wow, this is great. This is an amazing thing. I love it. By the same token, as I say, they're all now watching Blazing Saddles as well. And that's really interesting to me because, I discovered fairly recently that millennials consider almost anything racist. And for me, when I hear racial epithets in Blazing Saddles, it isn't that I would ever go around saying those things, nor would I, suggest somebody say it or support somebody saying it or anything like that. By the same token, for me, it's a word. That's all it is a word. It's a word you don't speak because you're polite, but it is a word. They find it emotionally jarring. The only way I can come to some sort of a analogy on this is the C word for most of the people of my generation, right? The C word. Now, outside of the United States, I believe in Australia, that word is, God, how do you want to say that it's equal to? It has approximately the same emotional connotation as jerk, maybe asshole, something like that. It doesn't have this really, really, really negative sexual connotation that it does in U.S. English. So for most Americans, that word appearing, even today, for generations, all prior generations, and including this one, that word is jarring to many people, particularly women, find it very jarring. The thing about the N-word and other such racial epithets is that they now have apparently that kind of a jarring, emotional whack across the face that the C word did, or does. So I think that's changed a lot. So to have them watching this and be able to get used to some of those epithets and then go, okay, wait a minute, this is total satire. This is complete satire from day one, and that's why these epithets work there. And it's too bad you could never make this movie again today, but you couldn't. But I do like watching these guys. They're starting to react more to that film, and at least one of them was terrified at the beginning. She's like, oh God, I know this is supposed to be some horrible racist thing. What if I don't like it because everybody says it's one of the funniest movies ever? Or better still, what if I do like it and there's all this racial epithets in it that I get associated with? It was only after watching it for a while, she went, oh, okay, I get it. It was satire then, it's satire now. Okay, too bad you couldn't make it now. Let's see. Young Frankenstein is funnier, Drop Tooth says. And Jeff's agreeing. Drop Tooth, when Blazing Saddles was first shown on Western Australian TV, the farting sounds and the big scene sounds are muted. Yes, they did that when it's broadcast television in the U.S. for a number of years. I don't think it's broadcast anymore, but when it was broadcast TV in syndication or nationally, yeah, it would be all silenced, which is so weird. You're seeing these guys getting up, moving, and all that, and there's nothing. And, of course, if you'd seen it in theaters, which a lot of people had early on, you go, oh, God, that's so stupid taking that out. Or getting rid of the racial epithets in such a way that you can't not know what the racial epithet was in the first place. Let's see. Jeff saying, yeah, they did the same here and edited the language as well. It was on HBO first. I don't remember exactly. Drop-It-Two says, claiming not to be a racist is claimed to be racist among SJWs today. Yes, I know. Yes, treating everybody equally and judging people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin is now racist if you're a cis, hetero, white-gendered male like myself. Jeff says, great show, Bill. Thank you. Okay, thanks to Jeff. You catch me up a little later. I'm not going to go on too terrifyingly much longer, but some. And peace and happy thoughts to you as well. Drop-a-Dude says, we had coon cheese in Australia for over 100 years since it was their surname of the family that owned the company. That has been changed to cheer cheese. Jeez. Ridiculous. So, yeah, all of that junk in there actually sort of started to kind of slip over into talking about science fiction stuff, maybe. So I'm probably going to spend a good chunk of the rest of the show because I'm not going to be on here too terrifyingly long. I can feel it in my back already, and I have to do the lawn tomorrow. Didn't do it today because it was too damn hot. And I have to get up early to do it tomorrow. So I can tell my back's starting to be problematic already, so I'm not going to be on that. You missed last week. What was my opinion? Drop-a-Two says of Superman and Lois. I thought it was fine. I mentioned I did talk about it last week, but I thought it was fine. The biggest problem I had with it was something I had mentioned a couple of episodes previously, when it looked like they were going to have that big fight, between the, I don't know, turned humans into Kryptonians and Superman, and then they kind of had this big boom, and that was it, and it didn't really go the place you thought it was going to go. And I said at that time, if you don't have the money to do it, right, if you don't have the money to do that the way that it should be done, if you can't do it right, don't do it. And my feeling at that point was, you'd hit that point where it was, okay, yeah, you have a lot of money, you have some cool effects you can do, but you can't do that battle that you wanted to do, so don't do it in the first place. Don't write it. And then they came back, and in the last episode, they did the exact same thing again. They took that exact same story point and brought it up again and ended it the same way without the giant battle. And my thinking was, okay, if you got enough money to do this and enough money to do this, and it's the same story point used twice, don't do it over here to begin with. Just do it in one giant piece and have a lot of money for the big fight. That was my biggest thing about it. That and the other thing, which I've said before, and you heard me say it, Drop of Truth, I think that when you get evil, superpowered Kryptonians or some kind of variation thereof, you've gotten into an area where it's now an overused trope. We have now seen evil Kryptonians so much since 1980, when it actually became a thing. We've seen them so much that it's now an overused trope. Should never have been used in the first place. Yeah, Drop Two, it was a predictable finale. No question about that. And I think part of that would have been better if they'd saved up all their money on the big battle for the big battle. You aren't watching Stargirl. Am I watching season 2? Yes, I'll be talking about that for a little bit anyway. I'll be talking about that shortly here. But as you've said, and I said it again last week, if you're going to do something, don't do Lex Luthor. He's an overused trope now. Don't do yet another Zod-like alien, Yazlas. It's an overused trope now. Use Brainiac. Use anybody who has been in this incredibly long, since 1938 history of this character. There are others besides yet another Zod-like alien, and you can use them. There's lots of other things besides Luthor, Zod, and I don't know. There's things that have been done so much to death. Find another one. And next year, save your big fight for the end. Throw all of your money into the end if you're going to do that. Anyway, with most of these, I didn't say it, but most of these, I as a reviewer do not generally sit down and rehash the plot to pause and say what I like or didn't like. Instead, I kind of go through, and when I'm doing a long review, I will try to talk a lot about the many things that go into making a movie or TV show. But that takes a lot of effort on my part, a lot of research, and generally, since my back is shot, I don't even have it to do right now. So I'm not going into as much detail as I usually do. But we will have to take it as read that if you have not watched Stargirl, this week's Lower Decks, or this week's What If, You have to come with this, either assuming that you don't care if it's spoiled, or better still, you've already watched it. So, with that in mind, we should probably issue a...
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All hands, prepare for incoming spoilers.
Yes, it is a spoiler alert, and that is because I am a secret master of fandom. That means the fandom is strong with me. But this isn't a boast, this isn't actually a brag, might sound like one, but it's not. It's just where you find yourself after having watched, read, and listened to over 100 years worth of science fiction. The problem with Secret Masters of Fandom is we're cursed. You cannot see all of the new stuff without seeing the century that came before. You find out there isn't that much that's original, and sometimes it interferes with your ability to enjoy things. But one thing I don't do is outrage reviews. There are a lot of people on YouTube who are just actors portraying outrage because they learned after The Last Jedi that boy does outrage sell. They hate everything with a knee-jerk reflex because that's what their viewers want to see, is them hate things. But unfortunately, this causes a weird feedback loop between fans and popular reviewers to the point where ultimately nobody likes anything. But I don't do that. If I like something and somebody else doesn't, I will say why in detail. If I dislike it, I'll say why in detail. But unlike other reviewers, I am the adult in this particular room. Drop2 says, did I bother watching the MCU's What If? It should be named Erase the White Dude. I'm going to talk about less about What If than the other two. I'm not going into depth on any of them. But I'm going to talk about What If less because, as you probably know, you've heard me say it, I don't like supporting that genocidal mouse that they belong to. But it is one of those shows that comes up and I don't feel like I can just walk away. Put it this way, arg, mateys, I sure as hell don't pay for the program. So, Stargirl, this week's Stargirl. I'll tell you what I walked away thinking about this week's Stargirl was I didn't remember much about this week's Stargirl. I am more interested in some of these characters that they're making disappear early to mid-season who must only come back at the big fight at the end. You know, it was like Jade. Yeah, she's going to be the big fight at the end. Johnny Thunder's Thunderbolt, going to be part of the muscle at the big fight at the end. We're not going to see much of those two because special effects budgets. This is a problem when you get into those characters and you get into anything Green Lantern related, the Johnny Thunder's Thunderbolt. Boy, you run into characters who are capable of, and have been shown as, from time to time, doing just about anything. So anything that my imagination, your imagination, the writers, the directors, the producers' imagination, anything they can come up with, one or both of those characters can make happen in terms of creating objects, in terms of, giant forces. And, Green Lantern ring is the most dangerous weapon in the known universe in DC. So I have a problem a little bit. I on the one hand, much like them, I would like to see these characters in this universe. The problem is you maybe don't have the budget to do those characters. It's why we saw, both the Jade and Johnny Thunder's Thunderbolt probably not going to be used again until the big finale at the end. And the deal is, if you don't have the money to do it, if you don't have the money to say, we're going to do Jade, so do we have the money to have her in every episode, or most of the episodes, or a good chunk of them in a major way? If the answer to that question is no, that we don't have the money to do that right, then don't do it. And having the characters show up and then disappear in the same episode tells me that you don't actually have the money for this. You're betting on the notion that everybody's going to tune in and watch this big battle at the end. Now, you may be right, hopefully, but it's always better to have the characters that you give a crap about, that are in your big fight, that you care about, be part of the episodes prior to then. Drop2 says, Critical Drinker's reviewers are still excellent, but even Nerdrotic has become an outraged reviewer like Doomcock. Yeah, I don't know. I don't pay any attention to other reviewers at this point. I have to review my own. I'm doing reviews on my own. I can't I can't go listening to what somebody else says at all, really. I don't pay any attention to them. If I know I'm not going to say something about something, then I maybe watch. But for the most part, I just ignore them completely. I don't want what I have to say influenced by what they have to say, even if it's accidental. There may well be moments when we're on the same page. That happens a lot. but it's not because I didn't think of it. It wasn't because I watched somebody else. That's just what I always do. But yes, there's a lot of outrage. Excuse me. So, otherwise Stargirl is fine. There's nothing wrong with Stargirl. I know I said last week, because as was with Superman and Lois, one of the few things that I can offer as somebody who is local to Kansas is a sense of perspective about that world. Stargirl's in Blue Valley, Nebraska. It is specifically located easily with, frickin' on a map. They've done it for you in the episodes. I haven't sat down to do the work that I want to do, which is tell you, here's where it is, here's what's around it. Yes, they're being accurate on the show. No, they're not. So I'll do that by next week sometime, so I'll have something useful to say about it from that perspective. Drop Truth says the CW should do a deliberately cheesy superhero stories like the 60s Batman instead of accidentally comic. Yeah. Let's just make Batwoman camp, Let's just do it. Let's just do it right out. Let's stop attempting to take that crap seriously. Let's just forget about it. Let's just give it to somebody who's campy to start with. Maybe we can just have Zucker Abrams and Zucker come out of retirement to run Batwoman. That would be good. Find the next Leslie Nielsen. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say about Stargirl. I don't have a lot to say about any of these, frankly, but that's what I have to say about Stargirl. And then there's Lower Decks. Real quick here. Drop 2 says, meanwhile, Star Trek Discovery Season 4 and Picard Season 2 are looming. You'll avoid them. Well, arg, matey, I sure as hell won't be paying for them. Yeah. Speaking of which, Lower Decks. What? Did anything happen there today that I should care about? As I always say, I really only have one requirement for this show, and that's that it be funny. And it still isn't funny. As I said last week, there was a lot less of it this week. But in the weeks where they do a lot of callbacks to prior Star Trek, always got to hand it to these guys, because they're making callbacks that are real. When they make references to other Star Trek, it is Star Trek that makes perfect sense in terms of the reference, right? They don't make incorrect references. If they're going to make something about, silver eyes and psychokinetic powers, like they did with Gary Mitchell, that was a correct callback. And it wasn't something that was wrong. It was accurate within the Star Trek lore. So I have to give it to them on a certain level, because I can't find one where they've been wrong. It's been, that's okay, another callback, but it hasn't been wrong. Somebody who knows what they're doing when they write this stuff on that regard. But by the same token, it's just not very funny, And this one in particular was not funny at all. Every place it tried to be funny, it just totally fell flat. And this one did not have the constant obsessive callbacks and references to other Star Treks. It had some, but not like it usually does. Let's see. So in terms of what Lower Decks, this total pass, I can't think of anything that I cared about in this episode at all. I cared so little that I don't remember very much of it. If I can walk away not remembering much of it, then it ain't that good, is it? Drop of Truth says, I'm just watching Farscape for the first time. It's great. One of my favorite reviewers, reactors, rather. Let me find her. I should know her name off the top of my head. Let's see. She is going and doing all of Star Trek, the animated series as well. Alexa Chipman Reactions. That's who it is, Alexa Chipman. She is watching all of Farscape as well, and reacting to it. I don't know if you'd necessarily get anything out of her, but I have sometimes when I've just watched something and I go and see what a reactor does. I'll get you a link to her channel here when I'm done here so you can see what she's doing. She watches a new episode, I think, about every week. She's one of those people who does a ton of reacting, and so does a new reaction about every week. So I'll find one of hers. Lower Decks makes SNL look funny, and you avoid SNL like the plague. I don't remember the last time SNL was funny. I think you could reliably say they were funny with the first cast and the Eddie Murphy cast. Between and after then, I don't know of anybody I care about that is actually funny on that. Don't watch reactors? Okay. And some people do and some don't. For me, I've said it a million times, it's a psychology thing with me. I tend to watch women my children's age because I can't get them to watch some of the stuff they react to. And it's, real quick here, I want to see something that someone apparently left somewhere about some... I am getting... Oh, okay. I have a video. It is audio of Quentin Tarantino talking about how great Roman Polanski is, and he sits and blames Polanski's victim. If you're not aware, Roman Polanski, director, film producer, lots of talent from everybody's accounts. He was into little girls. He got a 13-year-old girl over, gave her some Quaaludes, and gave her some booze. She asked to leave. He said she could not. And then he, what can I say on this platform, assaulted her. He was found guilty of statutory, I can't say the word, the R word. He was found guilty of that, fled to the country because it looked like he was going to have a plea deal that was going to keep him pretty well out of jail. And then that went south, and it looked like he was going to be sentenced to something very bad. So he fled to the country. So decades afterwards, here comes Quentin Tarantino talking about how it was all this girl's fault. So I have a video on there, and over time, I think it's like probably my most popular video because over time it keeps picking up more and more people who will watch it and react to it and oh my God, or I don't care. I get these from time to time on that video, and one just came in saying something. I wonder if Quentin Tarantino feels the same way on this matter. Like he's changed his mind. I think people are looking for reasons to not think he's a scumbag. From my perspective, you don't get a second chance on something like that. If at any time you ever thought that it was a good idea for a 45-year-old man to drug and booze up a 13-year-old girl and not allow her to leave when she says she wants, and then assault her, if you at any time think that's okay, you don't get a second chance with me. That is, so far, that's like right at the top of the list for stuff that's not okay. Brian Singer is exposed in the Digital Entertainment Network in the documentary An Open Secret. Yes. Tharias Unlimited is quite entertaining. Yes, he's another guy that's also very entertaining. And I don't think he's acting for the most part. Because from time to time, he will have opinions that are contrary to what the prevailing attitude is supposed to be on something. When you can get somebody who will from time to time give you an opinion that's not, just, oh, this sucks, getting angry about it, which, trust me, he does do. But when you get somebody who will say something that's against this sort of, narrative that the reviewers get into, that's a good thing. It could be he's just a complete idiot. But I don't think he is for the most part. I think he's capable of saying, hey, wait a minute. This is not that terrible. Yeah, it's dumb, but it's not that terrible. But yes, Bryan Singer, I mean, what goes on behind the doors at Hollywood is stomach churning. I have the saying, Hollywood, California, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. And I only wish that weren't a true statement. And this has been going on a long time now. It came to the forefront in terms of visibility with social media and the Me Too movement. But in reality, this has been going on since the day somebody set up a camera in Hollywood. It's been going on since then. You can look way back and find all kinds of nasty stuff going on, occasionally with children. This is not unusual. So yeah, Bryan Singer being exposed, it's just not that unusual. Hollywood, California, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Yes. Have I seen Black Widow? Mahler eviscerated it. Yeah. Mahler did in excess of 4 hours on that movie. Yeah, I've seen it. The end of it was dumb, just really dumb. I mean, basically from the point that they started falling out of the sky got stupid, just on a physical, physics level, right? You're not dealing with, something where the physics is completely out the window like it is on certain video games. You're dealing with stuff that, you're falling out of the sky. This ought to kill you. I thought that it was dumb on that level. I thought that it was mediocre at most other times. I think the biggest problem is that they put this in at a time when movie theaters are about to become a thing of the past. They're going to go away. And they released this one at a time when that was happening, when it's in the midst of its death throes in favor of streaming. So I think that was a problem for them right there. But the other thing is they didn't release it at the time period in which this is supposed to be occurring. It would have come after Civil War. And that would have made more sense. And if you'd put it out then you wouldn't have had to worry about, the virus and the lockdowns and movie theaters just disappearing entirely. I think it would have been much better fit at that time period. Now we're off in this time period where it's beginning to, I think, be where most people don't care anymore. It was a problem, and I would have done it. I would have just said sayonara at the end of Endgame. I would have said, okay, logically, thematically, we have hit the end of the MCU. Fade out the end, no more. And I think that's kind of what happened in people's minds, is that it's kind of like, okay, we saw the best they could ever possibly offer. How are they going to ever top that? The answer is probably never. But I think a lot of people like that in terms of the MCU. So you come out with a movie that we're supposed to, get into, and not only is the latter third of it just stupid, but I don't care anymore. I really don't care. I mean, once she sacrificed her life, I just don't care anymore. I was never that attached to this character, and having it come out at this time and in this place is the worst possible thing that could happen. Even if it was mediocre good, which there are some that are like that. If it happened years ago, you could look at it and say, yeah, well, it wasn't that great a movie, but, hey, it fit her in it, it did this and that. But now it's dumb for a third of the movie. Stuff that doesn't make sense from a narrative perspective. Yes, Mahler has done an extraordinarily good review. There's nothing I disagree with in that review. But it is 4 hours long for an hour and a half movie. Holy crap. Remember what happened to that young girl from Poltergeist? Yes, forgotten her name, of course, but she went on to get into drugs, alcohol, prostitution, ultimately cleaned up her life, thank goodness, but it took a lot of years for that. Drew Barrymore, that's who it was. Drew Barrymore. So, yeah, that's basically what I had to think about Lower Decks. It's just totally unmemorable. This time around, you didn't have this constant rattling off of references to other Star Trek, where it's usually Star Trek quip, Star Trek quip, Star Trek quip, quip. Now it was just quip, 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 Star Trek quip, 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 quip. It's totally unmemorable. I don't remember what happened in the thing. I don't remember it at all. That's how, I can't say it's bad, but it's not funny, and it's irrelevant. Are they actually getting anybody to sign up for the service over Lower Decks? Hard to imagine that they are. Hard to imagine that they're getting any subscriptions over that. Finally, I have something a little bit to say here about What If. Not going to talk about it a lot because I dislike talking about products that are owned by a genocidal mouse. But, it's there. Hard not to talk about it to a certain extent. Drew Barrymore. Oh, Heather O'Rourke. Is that who it was? Just died under strange circumstances. Okay, I misremembered. But not talking about anything that's new in Hollywood, unfortunately. I wish you were. Have a sec. I can't see what my thing says. Okay. So, what if? Not a ton to say about it, aside from the fact that so far we are ticking all the boxes for the woke. First episode had essentially a gender swap for Captain America. The second episode, what was the second episode? Blanking on it. This one, we had we killed off all the male characters in favor of having Captain Marvel around. That was the upshot of it. How do we kill off all the male characters, the big ones, and this is what we left with. Okay, it was interesting. I was more interested by the fact that the overwhelming majority of voices were the actual actors who voiced those characters in the films. Not all of them, but most of them. I thought that was neat. Otherwise, when the comic book What If takes on something, right, it's usually a little bigger than this. You could have one where what if Captain America were female? What if you lost these people? Okay, cool. But they're generally oftentimes a bigger, story point than that. What if, I don't know, what if Nebula got the Infinity Stones or something like that? Bigger deals and have a bigger outcome necessarily than this. This is just gender swapping and getting rid of white guys. Yes, yeah, that's right. Black Panther is Star-Lord. Yeah, that again, let's switch a skin color. Hank Pym, now homicidal maniac, what crap. Yeah, that bugged me too, with Hank Pym. I mean, the interesting thing about What If is what if we killed all the good male characters, okay? But actually, the what if is farther back in the past than that. The what if is, what if, is it Hope? I've forgotten. His daughter, what if she becomes an operative of S.H.I.E.L.D. very early on, dies, and it drives him nuts. That's the real what if. It's not what if we lost these characters. It is what if this other thing that happened in the past happened that caused somebody to want to kill off all our characters. That's really what the what if is. How will they destroy Doctor Strange? Take your pick. There's no one way to do it. You can do it with many different ways, and I'm sure they'll do it somehow. It's like you say. It's become so far this first 3 episodes is how can we do gender swaps? How can we do race swaps? And like you say, Hank Pym going completely insane. kind of crazy. The other thing about it is, I've been around Michael Douglas, I guess most, if not all, of his career. I guess not all of it. He's older than I am by a good 10 to 15 years, I guess. But I've been around him and around him and around him. I remember him on TV. I remember him in various movies. And the thing about it is, the guy's old now. Yeah, he's in pretty good shape, but he's still old now. When you do drawings of him in a suit that make him look buff, it doesn't fit with me at all. I know what that face looks like. I've watched it age my entire life. And when you make him big and buff, it doesn't fit for me at all. That really, you probably don't have that problem with younger viewers, but for somebody like me who's been around, this guy's been more or less my contemporary. I mean, I remember him on TV in the 1970s in the San Francisco Street, I think it was. I've forgotten. But he was a San Francisco cop, if I recall correctly. So I've seen him age, and, suddenly having him in modern day being buff just looks wrong. Just looks very wrong to me. Drop of Truth says, today it's what if the writers are identity politic obsessed. Yes, exactly. Yeah, there you are. Streets of San Francisco. That was the name of it. Yeah. He played a cop in Streets of San Francisco. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's where I remember him first. And then I've seen him in a string of movies and stuff that, for me, aged him as he went along, right? It's hard for me to look back now. I mean, I can see him in movies like Basic Instinct and stuff like that. Go, oh, yeah, I remember what that guy looked like in the 90s. But for me, his age is, he's been in so many things. I've watched him age all the way through. So when you stick him in a big and buff, I'm like, that does not look right at all. He was great in Falling Down. Yes, he's a great actor. Don't get me wrong. He's a fine actor. He does well with the material he's given here on the Marvel ones. I assume he probably joined the Marvel bunch because, like anybody else, if you ask me, do you want to do a Marvel movie? I'm like, you bet. I'm in. I don't care what it is. It may be that I can, get killed off and then resurrected and come back for 4 movies, even if I've got a small part. Absolutely, I'm going to take the money. I assume he's basically funding his retirement on Marvel movies. So, but he's a good actor, no question. It was just, I gotta say, it's just a deal where you start to draw these guys buff when I know that they're old men. Anyway, it wasn't bad. It's been 3 weeks now. Can we please do something that isn't identity politics based? There's lots of stories out there that your comic book has done repeatedly. Surely we can find one where you can have a story that doesn't require you to denigrate half of the population. So that's my take on What If. I don't have a lot to say about it beyond that. However, Drop of Two says he's funding his divorce from Catherine Zeta-Jones. That's certainly a possibility. Yeah. That's somebody I have to remember to look up if she's now that she's not attached to him. But anyhow, those were the things I had to say about that. I do have some stuff that came out in the DARKROOM this week. First off, I have the 9th episode of the Fleischer Superman cartoons, upscaled to 1440p QHD and 48 frames per second, and that episode is Terror on the Midway. It's the 9th one of these, released by Paramount between 1941 and 43, and I'm uploading one upscaled video per week for 17 weeks. This is one of the worst, if not the worst so far, prints that I've had of this. It's by no means pristine. However, we're still looking at so much detail and 24 frames per second animation. When you upscale this thing, it's very, very effective. When you watch this one, it's pretty straightforward. It's terror on the Midway. A circus comes to town, and through one thing or another, the animals escape, and Lois is in danger, and children are in danger, and it's all, it's Superman stuff. But it did have, the biggest thing it did have going in there was a fight with Superman and a gorilla. Now, of course, today it'd be like, okay, and? But back then, Superman was not so overpowered. you could at least conceivably imagine a gorilla being able to harm him in some way. Wasn't able to, but I mean, he's going through and caging all of these other animals. Finally gets into this big fight with the gorilla. Right? It's a big gorilla. You have to watch this and go, maybe, I wonder, was this maybe influenced by 1933's original King Kong? And you look at it and you have to wonder, wait, are we supposed to be getting this sort of Superman versus Kong vibes, especially since he's messing with Lois Lane and puts her in danger and all that. So I think that's really kind of cute that way. How long does it take to upscale an episode? Well, it's dependent on a number of factors. But for these, which are about 8 to 10 minutes each, the process of both upscaling and then reinterpolating for a higher frame rate are about the same length each. The process for upscaling naturally gets longer the longer video you have, and you tend to feel it real hard when that happens. But it doesn't... What did I do? I did something. I don't remember what I did with it. Oh, yeah, it's one of the next things I've got coming up in the Darkroom, in point of fact. The Spider-Man No Way Home teaser trailer, which will be out maybe yet this week, maybe the beginning of next. I've taken the... I'm going to be doing this, by the way, with trailers. It only occurred to me to do it with this one a little late in the game. But I'm going to be doing this with trailers that come out. I'm going to upscale them to 4K like I've done this, and then it's going to get 48 to 50 frames per second. My thinking is, if I take these movie trailers that I know the movies are going to do well, and I know that people are watching these things, well, what if I just, turn the dial up to 11 on them? For that one, for that trailer, the time necessary to do the interpolation, that is, I'm sorry, the scaling, took the better part for that length of thing, which wasn't very long, 4 or 5 hours. But then the interpolation, the creating more frames after it, that also took in the vicinity of 3 or 4 hours. It really depends on the length. The longer it is, the longer it's going to take all the way around. And it can get to points, I've had it on 1 or 2, where it takes more than 24 hours for the entire process. That can happen. It just depends how long it is. Fleischer's Superman cartoons were the first to have Superman fly. Yes. In every single one of the videos, I have a pinned comment that talks about, interesting things about this particular video. And that's listed in the very first thing, in the very first video, that this was the first time that Superman had ever flown in any medium. And that the comic books quickly stole it from him. Do I have an i7 with a decent graphics card and at least 32 gigs of RAM? Yes. I have 64 gigs of RAM I bought this very intentionally kind of higher edge laptop that's supposed to be a gaming laptop, but that also doubles well for what I do, because it does have the graphics card, yes. And it's pretty high end. It's not as high. It's not the highest high end. It was way up there when I bought it a year or almost year and a half or 2 ago now. So naturally, it's now down here someplace, while there's others that are more expensive that are up here. It was the best I could get at the time. But all of that stuff is dependent very much on your graphics card. But even then, you're talking about a fair amount of work. If you upscale something to 4K, and then you take 24 frames per second, and you have 4K freaking images, and you're going to interpolate between those and add another 4K image, and then another 4K image. You're going to double the number of images in this film. 4K is going to take a while. There's just no way around it. And I've tried it the other direction. Do the interpolation and then bring the video quality up to 4K. Doesn't work nearly as well. You need to start with the original and do as much of that in terms of upscaling it before you do the interpolation. At least that's what I've seemed to be having on my end. If you find out a better way, let me know. Excuse me. So back with the Fleischer Superman cartoon Terror on the Midway. It is interesting. If you watch the thing, you can see that the circus's star elephant is named Mumbo. Mumbo is the star elephant's name. This is a parody. If you don't know, in 1938, Disney came out with their movie Dumbo, which had a Mrs. Jumbo as a mother and Dumbo as the baby. So here we have, a couple of years later, them having a scene in a circus with Mumbo as your basic elephant. Dropper 2 says, you snapped up a used i7 2 gigabyte NVIDIA card with 32 gigs of RAM. Cheap. Cool. I don't know how it'll work for you. It just depends. There's no one answer to this. I'm sure somebody who was doing it a little differently, because there's different settings that you can have for, changing some of this. In point of fact, I'm going through and I'm experimenting right now with altering the settings pretty dramatically in a couple of cases to see if I can't clean up a couple of the prints. You could end up with me doing another upload where I've figured out how to take away some of the grain and scratches and things. I'm not sure I've got that yet. But if I'm going to be doing that, sometimes it'll take even longer. This is also, by the way, this particular cartoon is the last one that's going to be produced by the Fleischer's studio. The next one, starting with the Japateurs, and can we tell? We've hit World War II now in the production cycle. But the Japateurs and everything beyond that was made by Famous Studios, which is a successor to Fleischer Studios, kind of. It's a bit of a complex tale to tell. I'll be talking about that a lot next week. But suffice to say, this is the last one that Fleischers themselves produced. The budget, however, was a good $100,000 at the time, which translated into modern dollars is $2.7 million in 2021 for an 8-minute short. That is astonishing, and it tells you all the fact that I can run this thing in 1440p and 48 frames per second because the animation is just that good. Good instructional videos on YouTube. Yeah, I'll take a look. I haven't done a hell of a lot with it because I've been too busy playing with it. There's stuff that you'll never be able to see out of the darkroom because it's so badly copyrighted. And even as it is, I've got 2 or 3 things right now that unfortunately I'm having to chop into smaller pieces so that I can maybe get them uploaded in a way that won't get me copyright dinged. Because I got a lot of cool stuff. Let me just read off some of the things that I have that are already interpolated and ready to go. Videos. Interpolated. What do I have here? All the rest of the Fleischer cartoons. I've got 1930s Buck Rogers that I'm fiddling with. I have a 1930s Buck Rogers, 1940s Adventures of Captain Marvel that I'm screwing with. Oh, I have the entirety of Jupiter and Beyond for 2001: A Space Odyssey. That one it really doesn't want me to put up. I have the Battlestar Galactica opening from the TV series and the movie, if you ever went to see that in movie theaters. I have the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. Oh, guess what's causing me all kinds of copyright problems? They made a music video back then in the 1970s when you didn't make music videos. I got that one already up. I have the Fifth Doctor, the Fourth Doctor post-1980 credits. Somebody put that up in a nice, beautiful 4K. BBC put it up in a nice 4K, clean, no titles, nothing. So I'm taking that and taking it up a couple of levels, but the BBC really guards their copyrights. So playing with that as well. I have an entire episode of Dragnet that I may or may not ever get up there. I have an Enterprise flyby from Star Trek The Motion Picture. Again, copyright problems because of the music. The landing of the... No, I've already got that out there, I think. I have Forbidden Planet, the monsters of from the id and attack the C-57D 157D scene. Having problems with that too because of length. The monster from the attack. Okay, where are we at? The swimming and tiger clip I've got. The Planet of the Wonders of the Krell clip. Again, these are all long enough. It's causing problems, and I keep having to chop it down into pieces. I have a couple that I'm never going to put up because they suck. Got one, the rabbit seasoning cartoon clip out of one of the cartoons from the Looney Tunes in the highlight of the era. Some of it works nicely, and some of it doesn't because they weren't always doing 24 frames per second. I did play with the Star Trek The Animated Series opening title. That's kind of useless. They weren't animating at 24 frames per second, so interpolating, there's nothing to interpolate there. Some Star Trek First Contact that I'm playing with. I'm got the Superman 1978 helicopter sequence and opening titles. What a shock. Problems with copyright. I got a Superman Returns logos because I think there's a bunch of those. Superman Returns opening titles. I have a clip from Target Earth that'll probably make it up. I've got a Day of the Doctor thing that I'm also having problem getting up. I'm trying. I haven't yet to actually get it done, but this one I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get up. It is the Star Wars The Holiday Special cartoon. You know, the one that actually has Boba Fett in it? Well, I'm working on doing that. And let me tell you, finding a good print from that was tough. So those are the ones I'm working on that'll be out there eventually. It's mostly just a question of can I get YouTube to put it up. If they only give me a copyright claim, I'm okay with that. When they block me worldwide, then I've got to go back and do editing, which sucks. Big Brother Corporation, yes, that's YouTube. All of those videos, I actually have got them ready. It's just that I can't upload them reliably. So. Anyway, back to this cartoons, episode 9 of the Fleischer cartoons. As always on this, the voice is Lois Lane and Bud Collyer for what am I saying? Joan Alexander and Bud Collyer. They had started voicing these characters on the radio in 1940, and Collyer would go on from this point to become the recognized voice of Superman for more than a quarter of a century. It was similar to the way Kevin Conroy is today the recognized voice of Batman, because various people just kept hiring him. That's how we do with this one. Lots and lots of people hired Bud Collyer over the years, and he became the voice of Superman. As always, it is the yellow sun. Has nothing to do with Kryptonians' powers in the Golden Age. It was due entirely to the fact that the Kryptonians were a race of supermen on their own planet. And the Fleischer's animation style was extremely influential on Batman the Animated Series and the entire DC animated universe of the 1990s and 2000s. And it's often said that musical themes in which you can hear the word Superman are the most effective with this character. And if you watch this, Sammy Timberg does a whole bunch of stuff where you can hear Superman throughout his score. How about doing the Zapruder film? I'll give it a shot. I'll try it out. But the problem with that is there's no good source to start from. The success that you have in terms of upscaling and interpolating, the success you have has a lot to do with the quality of the original. You know, I can get something in 720p, and if it's in good shape, I can bring that up to 4K, double the frame rate, no problem, it'll be fine. But then you get stuff like the Zapruder film, which you don't have the original film of. You know, in order to get that, I would want to take that original film and put it, find the negative or something and put that onto a brand new transfer, so that I had something that was, say, in 4K to start with. But even if it was lower resolution, that can be reasonable. But the problem is it's not a good copy to start with. I don't think it was ever a great copy. So I'm not clear how much benefit you'll get out of it. It may be that when you blow it up larger, it just gets fuzzier, because there just isn't that much detail to go on in the first place. I'll give it a shot. Just because I'm curious. But having seen it do other stuff to similar or lesser quality videos, I guess, you don't get that much luck. It really, the how good something is in the end, at 60 frames per second and 4K depends to some extent on how good the original is. It's why upscaling the Star Trek the Animated Series opening titles doesn't do anything for it, because it was never in that good a quality to start with. The individual frames are in good quality, but they weren't moving at 24 frames per second, and so there's nothing to interpolate between all of those frames. Drop 2 says, you wish they'd do an animated version of the Orson Welles Shadow radio plays? Oh, sure, they could do all kinds of stuff with that. Drop 2 says, the Zapruder film is actually modified. The shadows don't match the onlookers. That's interesting. Well, I'll take a look at it in any case. I'll give it a shot, but it's hard to know for sure how it'll come out is all. So that is in the Darkroom this week. As always, it's a lot of fun to watch, and now that I've been fiddling with it, I'm going to see if maybe I can go back and make at least 2 of these that I've uploaded. See if I can't eliminate some of the noise in the original and try again and have it uploaded a second time. This is all kind of experimental, so I don't have any problem uploading a better version of the video. So, what the hell time is it now? It is 11 o'clock on the beam. So, I tell you what, it's been 2 hours. My lower back's starting to feel it, and I don't want to, I'm hoping that I'll get to a point where doing 3 hours isn't a problem anymore, and I'll just be cool anytime I want to do it. But the problem is that it hasn't gotten there yet. And I have to worry about maybe going backwards. I don't want to go backwards. To answer your question, how's my back doing? Did I get the natural medication? Can't comment on the latter. But my back's getting quite a lot better. I've gone most of several days without little to no pain. But that's because of the way that I'm taking care of it. Sitting here 2 hours in the chair, I can start to feel it. It's not going to be anything. I can go back and sit in the comfy chair, and I'll be okay because I'll be taking the pressure off the lower back. But I can feel it right now. It's possible. And nobody knows for sure. But you're dealing here with me with a congenital problem. I have this level of arthritis going on in my lower back that will never get better. I have some cartilage that's formed in a place that it shouldn't have in the same vertebra where I have my freaking arthritis, right? So I've got 2 things going against it there. It's like I say, it's gotten quite a lot better. It's possible that it may never disappear. At some point in my life, what's going to happen is that I'm probably almost certainly going to get addicted to opioid painkillers at some point. This is never going to completely go away. The last number of years of my father's life, he had a similar deal. The pain never completely, he was in a lot more pain than I was, which I expect to change as I get older as well. But this may just be one of those deals where okay, you got old enough, it may never go completely away. If that happens, then I'll be using other means, some of which I can't comment on, and see if I can fight the pain is the main thing. So right now it's in sort of a transitional state, I guess you might say. Ultrasonic treatment. That really isn't an option here. It's pretty straightforward in terms of how arthritis operates. There's just... Arthritis doesn't really get better. You just manage it. You try to stay away from things that'll will kill you. But we don't know for sure yet. We don't know for sure how it's going to turn out. It may be that I've just gotten old, and that's life. But it may get better. Either way, I expect that I'll be dealing with it in some fashion. I want to put myself in this chair for hours at a stretch, so it's certainly on my bucket list of things to keep having done. So, acupuncture, no, it's arthritis is essentially grinding on things that shouldn't be grinding on. Things have deteriorated to the point where you have bone grinding on bone in a place where it shouldn't. There's no way to restore that functionality. You don't get it back in there and then your bones aren't grinding on each other again. It's just a question of, okay, can you deal with the pain after a while? Yes, we're not getting any younger. That is certainly the case. Speaking of which, I think it being a little over 2 hours, I'm going to go ahead and pretty much sign off. I would certainly love to keep the conversation going, so please leave your comments, your questions, and your nasty remarks, and I'll do my best to respond to you. And of course, do please like, sub, hit the notification bell, share me on social media, because that is the way that I grow. So thanks for watching this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, and I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.